Throughout the years, we've all come to love Mario and his many, many games across Nintendo's consoles. As such, sometimes the time comes to shake things up a little, while at other times the developers decide to look back at where the franchise started. Super Mario Odyssey is inspired by both these concepts, and it marks a major turning point in the 3D Mario series. Mario Odyssey has become one of the best-selling Mario games of all time, reaching nearly 14 million units as of the end of 2018. For context, Mario Galaxy sold 12.78 million units during its lifetime, and it was on the Wii, one of the most successful consoles of all time. So yeah, I think it's safe to say this is a popular game we're talking about here. Let's start things off by briefly looking at how Mario Odyssey came to be developed. After Mario 3D World, the team wanted to move away from the linear-focused design that the team had adopted ever since Mario Galaxy 2. And thank goodness they did, because my opinions on the latest releases were, well, mixed. Anyway, the team decided to adopt a more open-world approach, so the player would have more freedom when playing the game. Over the next few months, they also discovered that people would be taking the Switch, which was still in development at the time, on short trips, such as on a train or school to work. Because of this, they decided to fill it with easy-to-get collectibles so that someone could play it for 5 minutes and still make progress. Apparently, the Mario Odyssey team was also partially responsible for detachable Joy-Cons, but anybody with the option doesn't use those things anyway, so, you know, good job, I guess? We first saw the game during the Nintendo Switch presentation in 2017. We saw Mario running around in what we assumed to be New York, Bowser looking way better than a turtle should, and of course the star of the show, the cap throw. I mean seriously, this one shot got people freaking out. However, there was one part which we could never have seen coming. This would come during E3 of that year. The morning of June 6, 2017, Nintendo dropped a huge bomb on all their viewers around the world. You see, the team debated whether or not to show the main focus of the game in January or June, and they ultimately decided that E3 would be a better opportunity. We saw dinosaurs stomping around on a field, and then Jump Up Superstar, baby! For the first time a Mario game had lyrics! Okay, yeah, that obviously wasn't it. It was the ability to capture creatures and people using Mario's new companion, Cappy. The hype didn't stop there though. Over the next few months, we got more and more information, and it seemed the internet was collectively holding its breath. I remember going on YouTube a few days before the game released and being super jealous of all the people who got review copies. Of course, I pre-downloaded the game and opened it up the moment I could. It was everything I expected it to be, and for the first several hours of my playthrough, I really enjoyed it. First off, Mario's controls feel incredibly solid, and I'm glad to see that the new ones are just as cool to use. Unfortunately, this is where my first problem comes in. I originally played the game with the Joy-Cons and quickly adapted to the controls. Replaying this, however, I use a Pro controller which I got since then. However, most of the cap moves require motion controls, which is something I don't enjoy while using my $80 controller. For instance, the circle throw requires you to flick the controller to the side. Alternatively, you can also spin around and then press Y. The problem is that this kills your momentum completely, so you'll be inclined to use the primary method. This doesn't sound like a huge problem, but believe me, it really kills the flow of the game when you hit one of these roadblocks. I will say though, that these controls are much better than the 3D Land and World games. I won't be going over each individual level like in my Mario 64 video, but rather I'll try to look at the game as a whole and see how it compares to the other 3D Mario games. I'd like to start off with the open world idea. Mario Odyssey claims to follow suit with 64 and Sunshine by offering small worlds which you are free to explore while looking for the main objectives. This is implemented very well in most cases. There are several kingdoms which are full of moons and tucked away places. Examples that come to mind are the Sand, Forest, and Luncheon kingdoms. However, half the worlds are let down. They feature very little in the way of exploration, and some like the Lake Kingdom have barely anything going on. Here's another instance. We're on our way to New Donk City, but then Bowser shoots us out of the sky. We actually go to the Lost Isle first and save Cappy. On my first playthrough, I was so disappointed that I wasn't even excited about the plot twist. I guess what I didn't like about them is that they were such generic ideas for settings with little to no innovation. I mean seriously, did anyone enjoy the Lake Kingdom? To be fair though, I did enjoy the majority of the worlds, and for most of the game, I was generally having a good time. You know how there's always a mountain world? Well, in Odyssey, we get Italian food mountains as a theme. It seems that everyone has been comparing this design to that of an open world game. Nintendo even advertised that it was a return to the approach of Super Mario 64. The problem is that Mario Odyssey isn't open world. Take for instance the Sand Kingdom. In a normal playthrough of the game, you don't go around the entire world looking for moons, but rather follow the path the developers already made in the form of multi-moons. Even if you go off the path, there's very little in the way of rewards until you fight the Brutals. What's more, you can't go to the kingdoms in whatever order you wish. There are maybe 2 or 3 instances in which you get to choose where to go, but you're forced to go to the other land before progressing anyway. I understand that moon requirements are essential to the pacing of the game, but that doesn't explain the forced world order. Let me draw a comparison. In Mario Galaxy, which everyone claims is the more linear of the two, you are given several galaxies to choose from. You still need to get a certain amount of stars to progress, but it's pretty much up to you which order you do the galaxies in. Don't like the surfing level? You can skip right past it and choose another mission instead. Again, I must emphasize my understanding that accessibility is key. Wouldn't it be so much better though if you could skip a certain kingdom or go in whatever order you wanted? I know I'm going to get some disagreement in the comments about this, but I just can't shake the feeling that Odyssey was a little overhyped in this department. As for the Power Moons themselves, I like the fact that there are so many collectibles which are separate from the main story. However, I don't really think there need to be so many. Several of them are just sitting in plain sight, and 2 years later, I still can't get myself to go and collect 999 moons. You see, in older Mario games, the goal of collecting 120 stars was never that daunting, so completing the game always seemed like a possibility. Well, except for 3D World and Sunshine, that is. Mario Odyssey just seems like the team had a base game, but decided to add more on top of it without increasing the map sizes, with the result of the game becoming outright unenjoyable after the 600 mark. It's like if I had a burrito. If I wanted to make it bigger, I'd add more stuff into the burrito. What Nintendo did, however, was just wrap more tortillas around the outside so that it looked bigger without adding more stuff on the inside to balance it out. Despite this, however, you probably won't notice this until you've entered the post-game, since a lot of the moons don't become available until after the end credits. Another thing I want to touch on are the bosses. The Koopalings are nowhere to be seen. Even Bowser Jr. isn't around here. The replacement is a group of wedding planners called the Brutals. I'll admit that these bosses do get repetitive by the time you get to Bowser's Castle, but it isn't the biggest issue, especially since these guys are mini-bosses most of the time. For the big guys, Nintendo once again proved that if they actually use their imaginations, they can actually make a game that makes you wonder what you'll be fighting next. There's a giant electric wiggler, a machine trying to steal flowers from the steam gardens, an octopus that drinks soda for some reason, and a giant hand boss reminiscent of Super Mario 64. Unfortunately, however creative they may be, these bosses hardly do anything to fix the difficulty. Mario Odyssey is definitely not a walk in the park, but there isn't a very big challenge spike with the stages or even the bosses. As a veteran Mario fan, this is a bit disappointing since even 3D World had a few life grinders near the end. There is one stage at the end which is a signature final challenge, but even compared to something like Champion's Road, it's comparatively tame. Maybe I'll touch upon this in another video, but in my opinion, not including checkpoints doesn't increase the game's difficulty. One of the reasons the darker side took so long was because of a few parts where if you messed up your timing, you had to retrace your 5 minutes of progress. This doesn't seem like too much, but imagine going through the same mastered areas every time you die. It gets boring and outright frustrating after a while. This, however, only applies to a fraction of the game, since this game doesn't use a life system. If you happen to fall off a cliff or something, you lose 10 coins and then go on with your day. Since coins are used as currency this time to buy outfits and collectibles, this is a really great idea. The only thing I would change is increasing the amount of points you lose. Maybe 25 would hurt a little more so it feels like death has a consequence. Overall though, it's a small improvement that I hope they follow in the future. So if you know anything about this game, you know that Mario's signature move this time is possessing enemies instead of collecting power-ups. Note that Nintendo was very clear to say he captures them instead of possessing them. Probably because that didn't sound too good on their ad campaign. Anyway, I simply love how many ideas the team was able to come up with. Using tanks to fire cannonballs, flying across ruins with bullet bills, climbing up with the birds, soaring across canyons with whatever this thing is, turning into a frog to increase your jump height, and smashing everything in your path with a T-Rex. Okay, so it's like in 2 places, it's actually not that impressive, but you know. These are far better ideas than the typical mushroom and fire flower, but I'm not sure if I'd be up for the same mechanic again. It's a great novelty, but the thing that makes it special is the unique element which it brings to this particular game. It's great, but they would probably need to add quite a few enemies for me to be happy with this next installment. But of course, the best part of any game is your quest. Brief warning, there are spoilers ahead, so skip to this timestamp if you still need to play the game for some reason. Mario games have never been known for their deep stories, and this entry is no exception. You chase after Bowser as he collects all the required stuff for his wedding on the moon with Peach. Just a typical day in the Mario universe. I guess after destroying the world, he decided to scale down his ambitions. When you finally catch up to him, it's time for Mario to show Bowser who the man is around here. Oh, Mario, I know you dislike the guy, but jeez, talk about knocking a guy down a peg. Or 2. So you punch Bowser in the crotch so hard that he flies into a wall, capture him to save Peach from the collapsing moon, and finally, Mario gets a chance to propose with Bowser's body romantically sprawled out in the background. And here's where the rage begins. First off, Bowser somehow thinks he can convince Peach to marry him and starts fighting with Mario. Instead of just laughing it off, Peach dumps both of them. Not only that, but she leaves them on the freaking moon. I'm sorry, but ever since this game came out, I have absolutely no respect for Peach. Hey, woman, here's a little secret. Playing hard to get isn't attractive, especially if it means abandoning them in outer space to die. So then Mario barely reaches the Odyssey and catches a ride home to the Mushroom Kingdom. But then, he finds out that Peach has gone on her own honeymoon. Mario, it's at this point where you conclude that this girl just isn't worth it. So overall, the game is pretty good. It has a few minor issues, but nothing that brings the experience down below an 8 for me. However, here's where all the dislikes will begin. I don't need a Mario Odyssey sequel. This game is an experience that will only leave its impact once. I remember losing my save file in the middle of my post-game, and playing it for the second time in a row brought the experience down considerably. Getting another 500 moons to reach the darker side of the moon was a chore, and I found myself using my Bowser amiibo to find hidden coins much more than I initially planned. It's an excellent game, but I personally prefer the style of Super Mario Galaxy, where there are tons of worlds with fewer missions. But hey, that's just my opinion. But because my opinion doesn't matter, make sure to leave a comment telling me how I was wrong, because nothing can be perfect on the internet. And make sure if you like this video to like and subscribe to let me know that I should keep doing more. In the meantime, however, thanks for watching.